Welcome to the Self Revolution podcast. This is your weekly reminder to wake up to who the fuck you really are. I'm your host, Breanna Rae Blaney, and it is truly my honor to guide you on this journey of self-revolution and evolution. Join me as one by one, we collectively wake up to create a more harmonious, enlightened, and fulfilled world. Welcome back to the Self Revolution podcast. Believe it or not, this is the last episode of the season. It's been so much fun to have these conversations with you all, and I can't wait to come back for an even better season 2. Season 1 has been all about having some of these initial conversations around who we really are and exploring different tools that can help aid you in your self-revolution. And next season, I'm excited to interview more guests alongside some of these more educational episodes around their own personal self-revolutions. So I thought it'd be fun to end this season diving into my own self-revolution, to put me on the hot seat, as they say. And who better to interview me than my long-term partner, Michael. Welcome to Self-Revolution, Michael.
Happy to be here.
How's it feel?
It feels great. It's an honor.
So Michael, as I mentioned, he has been my partner of 8 years, and he has been with me through many seasons of my personal evolution and has really helped me through many seasons of my personal evolution. So Michael, with that, over to you.
Thanks for having me, B. It really is an honor to be here. And it's been fun to help out with these past few episodes, but to get in front of the camera and microphone to interview is really fun. So
yeah, I guess we didn't mention Michael has also been my producer alongside my lover and manager. So he has helped see this vision come to life. So thank you for that, babe.
Of course, stepping in to support. So thanks for having me.
Excited you're here.
Yeah, it's been a beautiful journey, these past 8 years, meeting you when you're 22 and I was 23. And I've seen a lot of this evolution on my own, but really excited for people to hear about that firsthand from you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So since we're here on the Self-Revolution pod, how would you define self-revolution?
Yeah. Self-revolution is really a journey. It's not a destination. It really is this thing that I think continues to happen throughout your life. And the title of Revolution, Evolution is very intentional in that way. I think we come to these moments of revolution in our lives where something happens. Maybe we go through a challenging time period, or we have this moment of awakening or insight, and it causes us to rethink about who we really are and maybe the direction we want to go in our own lives. And it involves us evolving ourselves to step into that next version of the essence of who we are. And so that's really the journey of self-revolution. And I have felt so passionately about this for myself, as it not only helps you evolve yourself, but it helps you serve others in a more impactful manner. I really do believe that a global revolution starts with a self-revolution. And by understanding who we are, we have the ability to evolve our own consciousness, which in turn changes the world. Love
that. And that speaks to your broader vision, which I'm going to ask more about later. But that actually brings me to my next question was, when was that first moment of self-revolution?
Yeah. I think the first moment that I had a massive self-revolution was when I got really sick in college. And so I was going into my sophomore year, or maybe it was in the middle of my freshman year, that I first had this immense experience of pain. And so I was out one night and I had been partying and drinking, but I came home and I was just like riveting in pain. And I didn't know if it was period cramps or what was happening, but I was just gripping my stomach, and I was in the shower, and eventually it went away. And that continued to happen on a semi-frequent basis every few months. And I started going to doctors, and no one could really figure out what was wrong with me. And it was pretty jarring to be in this state where your physical body was going through something that was rather intense, but you weren't sure why, and no one could give you any answers. And so I started to disassociate with my body, but not necessarily in a bad way. It was just from this sense that I realized that I was not my physical body. I realized in these moments of pain where I was laying in the bathtub late at night with hot water running over me that this wasn't all there was to me, that there was someone there who was witnessing my physical body in this pain. And I began to detach from my physical body being the manifestation of myself. I began to realize and almost connect to a more spiritual source. I don't think I had that language at the time. And that's what really brought me through that time. I ended up getting surgery. I had a condition called UPJ, uretropelvic junction, where the tube that was connected to my kidney to my bladder was too small. So I was getting these massive kidney infections. And one night I had such a massive infection that I was in the ER. They finally figured this out, but I had such a bad infection that they had to put a tube, 6-foot tube, coming out of my back to basically drain my kidney for 6 months until I could have surgery. And so I was going into my junior year of college with this massive tube coming out of my back, draining my kidney, which is pretty gross. And as you can imagine, you're young, not teenage at the time. I guess I was a teenager still at the time, but college girl. And so much emphasis is placed on how you look and your physical body. And I think for that, it really, again, it made me realize that there was more to me than just my physical appearance. And I was really proud of how I navigated that time and how connected I stayed to myself. And I chose to stay in school and I didn't drop out and I got great grades that quarter. And I was forced to stop drinking and having caffeine, which was huge actually for my health. And would later come to realize that that was a cause of a lot of the inflammation in my body. But that story, it really did kind of emphasize for me. I think it was the first moment that I realized that self was more than that. And two, that there was maybe a greater force at play that was within me.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, obviously I know that story, but it's a lot to go through, especially at such a young age. And I think oftentimes we do feel that, like if our health is put into such a state that can really wake us up. And for that to happen to you at such an early age, that's a lot. Yeah. But what was next? What was your next self-revolution? As you progress through college and get into the real world, what was your next revolution like?
There were many little moments throughout that journey, but I'd say the next really kind of massive pivotal point came for me after I'd been working in finance for many years, and I had been working at a real estate private equity firm, and I had gotten pretty disconnected from myself during that experience again. And I found myself really back in a very, very depleted state after that. And so I went on a trip to Costa Rica. It was one of my first solo trips I ever took. And that was a really impactful experience for me in terms of traveling by myself for the first time and then really immersing myself in a very spiritual experience. So that was huge. And then again, a number of years later, I had started a company called Raywear, which I was building or creating custom clothing for women. And you were intimately involved in that whole journey as well. But I had poured so much of my heart and my soul into creating this company for a number of years. And not 6 months after I launched, I realized, or I had this sense that I wasn't so connected to it actually. And that was a very, very rude awakening because, again, I had created something that was my own and I had thought that this was this thing that was going to bring me fulfillment in my life. And I realized that it actually wasn't. And so that was a big eye opener. And it really took me down this path of asking what actually does create fulfillment in life and who am I really? And that deepened my study of Vedic philosophy in many ways, which helped guide me down the journey of those answers and ultimately to my Dharma and my innate purpose.
I'm glad you bring that up because the Raywear journey was a lot and it was amazing to see you build this company and you, as a young, mid-20s, put so much effort into this thing, and it was beautiful branding and fabric and design and doing something no one had ever done before. And then to get to the point where it was launching and then it wasn't aligned with what you wanted. It was hard, but also great to see you like crystallizing that. And so you speak of Dharma, and it's something that you've helped me figure out in my own life. But I would love if you could like touch more on what Dharma is and how that's driven your purpose now.
Yeah. Dharma, the word Dharma means natural law, and it is this concept of coming back into alignment and harmony with the world around you. And so everything is really driven by Dharma. And when we talk about the concept of disconnection, it's because we are disconnected from the Dharma within us and the ultimate and greater Dharma that is ever present. And in Vedic philosophy, the teaching is that each of us as individuals has a individual purpose, a svadharma, and that's what it's called. And we have an innate reason that we're here. And when I first learned about that, I first probably heard the word dharma much earlier. But when I was going through, I'd say kind of this crisis with Rayware, I found that again. And I started really sitting with this concept of, well, what is my innate purpose? Why am I uniquely here? And I think often it's easy to feel like your life maybe isn't all that meaningful, that there are so many people in the world that what's so special about me? And from a Vedic view, there are no mistakes. There is a reason that you specifically are here, and that there will never be anyone to walk this earth exactly like you. And when I really started sitting with that, it puts things into perspective that, wow, okay, no one like me is ever going to exist again. My life is innately meaningful. So what the fuck am I going to do with it? You know? And I mean, that's the tagline for self-revolution, is waking you up to who the fuck you really are. And that's what I mean by that. And that's what I was going through during that time in my life, was like, okay, if this is your one life, what the fuck are you going to do? And how are you going to wake up to this, to your innate potential? And so that really brought me down this journey of exploring why I'm really here and sitting with what my innate skill sets and strengths are. And the journey of Dharma isn't, again, one point, but I have found it very important to actually articulate your Dharma and be able to articulate why you specifically are here. And while that may continue to evolve, I think that the seeds of that are really implanted in the depths of your own soul.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can attest that once you help me figure out mine, it's bled into everything else and what I do in life and inform just how I go about things, which is amazing. But I think a lot of people would wonder, how did you specifically get to the bottom of what your Dharma is? Like, what did you practically do to get to that point?
I started reading philosophy for sure around what Dharma was. And then I took my own lens on that. And so I really, throughout my journey, have been my own first student. And so I started really sitting with and listing out, like, what makes me me? What are my unique skill sets? What are aspects of my journey that I have gleaned, like these big insights? And I think often when you look back on your journey of the things that you've been through, there are these different inflection points in your path that often have themes to them. And so there are kind of these karmic patterns that we are often meant to burn through in our lives. And so the challenges that we specifically face often set us up to more fully embody and fulfill our purpose and serve others in a more impactful way. And so when I started doing that for myself, it became clearer and clearer and clearer that my Dharma, my purpose, really centered around this idea of connecting people back to the core of who they are and helping them see their full potential in life so that they could create, and that we collectively could create, a more harmonious, enlightened, and fulfilled world. Often we idolize these things or have these things that we really want to feel in our life. Like, we want to feel beautiful, or we want to feel sexy, or we want to feel confident. And we tend to seek those things outside of ourselves. We spend all of this money on beauty products and facials and all this time getting ready, when in reality, the true essence of confidence, of beauty comes from within. And that's what I found in my own personal experience is that when I have really aligned with my true self, when I've gotten myself in the right harmony and rhythm and making choices that support my innate nature, it has allowed me to be more beautiful. And not just more beautiful in the physical sense, but really in the internal sense of that as well, but also in the physical sense, like all of the inflammation that we were talking about from my younger years, that's gone. I mean, I look like a different person. And I've seen that with other people as well. I've even seen that with you when you're looking into someone's eyes who has done this level of exploration within themselves. They look like a different person. They talk like a different person. They have a magnetism and energy about them that is different than others or different than they were before. And so all of this really does come from the inside out. And it is a lasting presence. It's not something that is fleeting. It's not a beauty or a confidence that is fleeting. It is something that is ever present. And when you do that and you tap into that, it radiates into your external world. It radiates into your life. It magnetizes more money, or the things that I'd say we traditionally think of as more success. And it's not that you're doing it for that sake, right? You're doing it so that you can serve others in a more effective manner. But the other aspects of that are often these rewards that do come in the more traditional sense of the word success.
True. And it is, the important thing is being confident in yourself. But we live in LA, babe. If you convince people that the self-work is going to make them sexier, we're going to be rich.
I know. I guess it's true. I mean, I do want it to feel that way because that's what it's done for me. That's how it's made me feel. And I want other people to feel that way. I think we tend to like think of self-work and like therapy and all of these things that feel so like buttoned up and rigid, or something's wrong with you. If you have it, like you need to go do this because something's wrong. Where in reality, no. It's like if you want to be operating at 108, 110, 100, 1,000%, guess what you need to be doing? You got to dig deep. And when you start to dig deep and unearth these things, it maximizes your potential in life. And yeah, that's what I'm about.
But I also know it hasn't been easy sailing. It hasn't always been just easy for you to follow this journey, and there's been challenges along the way. So I wonder if you could touch upon some of those challenges you've had to face and overcome, and setbacks, and just what that's been like for you.
There's been many. It has not been a smooth ride by any means. And I think if you're really committed to this path of evolution, it's not ever a smooth journey. So for me, I'd say the biggest thread or challenge that I've continued to face in my journey has been this association with dual identities. I have been working in the corporate world and finance for the past decade, and I always idolized, I think as a young girl, these women in business suits and high heels, and I always thought that that was like who I wanted to be when I grew up. I wanted to be a teacher at first, but then I think as in the high school years, I was like, okay, yeah, I want to be the sexy businesswoman with power. That looks good to me. I want to be the badass. And I did that, and I have achieved that in many ways. And I think to myself before I present in front of big audiences, and I'm like, wow, I'm doing what my little girl would have been really, really proud of. But on the flip side of the coin, I also love being in the dirt with no makeup on, completely immersed in nature, meditating alone. And for some reason, I feel so connected to and, yeah, just resonant with these like really ancient teachings. And so I think it's fascinating to me that those two worlds are so opposite from one another, yet I have found myself just in the intersection of the two of those, and it's been really hard. at times to navigate that and to, have to deal with the pressure, honestly, of both of those, and to really feel kind of misunderstood and that I don't really belong, because in that world, this side isn't accepted, or who am I to necessarily experience those things? And then on the flip side, obviously in finance and in a lot of the modern world, these ancient teachings and, sitting and meditating in silence isn't necessarily the everyday norm. And so it has been really challenging.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I've been on this journey with you, so I've seen that.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. It's funny to hear you say that, though. I mean, you've always, at least in my view, gone to the beat of your own drum and done whatever you wanted to do, which is one of the things I love about you. But society does ask us to conform to these boxes and put labels on who we are and what we do. And how did you step out of that? How do we do that?
Yeah, for me, I felt so connected. Like when I started meditating and started really connecting to myself, it was this thing that I almost hid from the world. And we went through this in our own relationship too. It felt like it was my thing. And I didn't really feel like it was going to be accepted by society. And so I chose to kind of keep it to myself in my own little corner. And I would share it occasionally, but not really. And I hardly shared it really with you. And a lot of that goes back to like what's accepted and who I thought I should really be and what I needed to show the outside world. When in reality, I like knew that that wasn't my true identity. And so I think very early on, I mean, even at the age of 22, 21, 20, I was experiencing that. And so that seed of disconnection was rooted really early for me in terms of those dual identities. And really the past decade has been me trying to figure out and trying to get out of these boxes that I had felt like I was putting myself in. And so the one that I mentioned, this ultimate kind of duality that I have been working to integrate in my own heart and mind, has been the spiritual world and the corporate business world. But there's so many others, whether it's the feminine, the masculine, and being in a really in a really masculine driven society and working in an industry like finance. As a woman, I was adapting many masculine traits in my work without even really realizing it. And it was fascinating. And there's a whole nother story of my health and how that impacted me. But I had a lot more testosterone in my body, and that was impacting my health. And I personally believe that that's because I was acting in a much more masculine way. I was actually kind of living in an inauthentic place to my true self. And so I had a journey of reconnecting to my own femininity and leading from a more feminine way and figuring out how to integrate that. And so it can be really challenging, in particularly the state of the world that we're in today, of all of these boxes, and trying to really create the awareness of where you're just following orders because that's what you've been told to do, versus actually questioning whether it is authentic and aligned with your true path.
Totally. And I think many people probably do that because it feels safer to just stay in the box and do what society thinks you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to tap into what maybe you really want and step outside of that. I wonder if you could touch on some of the practices and like things that you went through that helped you do that. You know, obviously I know, but yoga, meditation, just touch on some of those things.
Yeah. I mean, many of them we've started talking about on the podcast this season. Things like having a daily routine, your dinacharya, and building a meditation practice, building a relationship with yourself. All of those are tools that have been integral to my own journey. And yoga, the science of yoga, the science of self-realization, has been where the majority of my tools have really come from. And so through yoga teacher trainings, through the various books that I've studied and read, through my mentors and teachers, all of those are practices that I now integrate on a daily basis, really. And I'm starting off my day exposed to those practice. I'm ending my evening studying more, and that really is what has aided in my evolution. And meditation has been a massive, massive part of that for me. I talked a lot about that in the episode that we did on the podcast about that. But meditation really is a huge tool in the transformation of consciousness. And when you're meditating, you are able to truly evolve your consciousness. And so I have, this dream that meditation is taught in every single school alongside financial education. And I just truly believe that when you start meditating with yourself and you are able to connect that greater source within, you become limitless, and you know that you're limitless. And that, again, helps you stay strong in the face of opposition.
Love that. And I've seen that happen, in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. What, you talk a lot about getting in touch with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
the true self, who you really are. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering if you could define who you are.
Identity is such a huge part of life. And I have done this exercise with myself. I've done it with many clients where I ask you, who you are, and ask on a blank piece of paper to write down the things of how you would describe who you are. And often people start by writing down all of these things that are associated with them in their life. Like, maybe I am a husband, or I'm a wife, or I am a teacher and this is my profession, or I am beautiful, or something about the physical body. There's all of these identities that we attach ourselves to externally. Yet when you really start talking about true self-revolution and the concept of the self from a Vedic philosophy, from the Vedic tradition, it's nothing to do with the external world. It's all to do with the internal world. And it's about taking yourself from the limited self of the ego and dropping back into the greater cosmic self of consciousness. And that is how I would define who I am. And so if you really asked me who I am at the core of my core, I'd say love. And that's really who we all are at the core of our core, is that we're not attached to this physical bodies or our minds. Those are aspects of ourselves. But at the core of our core, we are all rooted in this unconditional love that is consciousness itself.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, it makes so much sense hearing you say that. Maybe it's because I live with you and I hear this every day. But that's not what we're taught, right? Like society, we don't talk, especially in the West, we don't talk about this. Why? It seems so obvious. Why do you think it is that way?
It's funny. A teacher was sharing, if you in the East said that we're all God, everyone would agree and nod their heads. But in the West, if you said you are God, everyone would look like you're crazy, right? If I said that to you. And that's really the essence of this basic Vedic teaching, is that we are all that limitless source of pure potentiality that lives within us. And I am that, and you are that, and we are all one. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're saying, okay, sounds like crazy talk, I hear you and I see you. And I think that it is a little far out there for most of us who grew up in the West. But when you start to go down this journey of self-revolution for yourself, I think it's hard to come to any other conclusion. And so while the ancient teachings may say that, when you start to do these practices yourself, I think that that's the answer that you come to. And to me, you can even simplify it further when you just look into the eyes of another human being and you really ask yourself, what do you see? Who are they? And what do we have in common? I think you see the same thing. So I think it's a massive tragedy that we aren't exposed to these things and we aren't allowed, or it's not encouraged for us to believe in our innate potential as human beings. And that, again, is why we have to wake ourselves up to who the fuck we really are.
There it is. I've never claimed to be God, but with my hair down, some people have called me Jesus, but
True.
I haven't said that. So
I love it.
maybe not crazy. Again, why you define self-revolution for us at the beginning of this, but why this podcast? Like, what's your mission now?
It goes back to what I shared at the beginning, that a global revolution starts with a self-revolution. It really is a tragedy that we are not taught about ourselves at a young age. That it takes people decades upon decades, if ever, in their lifetime to really understand who they are and how they work. And without that understanding, you can't step into your full potential as a human being because you are working, again, with a limited self. And so the purpose of this podcast, the purpose of sharing about a self-revolution is so that we can all do that. There's no competition here. You are a unique human being. I'm a unique human being. We all need to be activated in our full potentiality. And I believe the most effective way to do that is by activating you on yourself, by helping you learn how to love every single aspect of yourself, to accept every aspect of yourself, to understand how your body functions, which is going to be slightly different than mine, and to help you understand why you're really here and all of those aspects so that you can ultimately serve us all to the greatest degree you possibly can.
That's amazing. It's a beautiful mission. I will say one of the things I love most about you and your work, and obviously I'm a little biased, but I love that this isn't just another woman on the internet spewing things. Like, you base this in something that is thousands of years old, and you, particularly with the Vedic tradition and philosophy, can you touch on why it is that you resonate so deeply with the Vedic philosophy?
It's interesting because when I started down this path, I was exposed to Vedic philosophy through yoga. And I had been studying yoga for honestly a while before I actually realized that it was from the Vedic tradition. Because again, in the West, most yoga teacher trainings, they're not necessarily going into the full depth of these things, or it's not what is emphasized, even if it's there. And so my first exposure was really through yoga and the Yoga Sutras and starting to read about that. And then when I got deeper in and started learning about Ayurveda, and Ayurveda is the science of life, and then ultimately to the Vedas and the Upanishads, it was revolutionary. And what was so revolutionary about it in many ways is that this is the oldest text, the oldest spiritual text in the world, 5,000 years old. And this text is the basis for almost all religion in the world, they say. And yet somehow we have strayed so far from it. These texts, like the Upanishads, can contain these universal truths about how we function. And when you start to read those and dive into them, some of which we've talked about today, in my own life, it's been hard to say that they aren't true. I mean, it just is so intuitive. It's my own lived experience. When I read that, I can see how it functions in my day to day. And so that is what's connected to me to it so strongly. This sense that we are all interconnected, the aspect that our mind, body, spirit are all one. I mean, these fundamental principles of the Vedas, it's what drives life. And we go searching throughout life, trying to figure this out when we've got a ancient text that can give us the foundation and we can customize it from there.
It makes sense, especially knowing you. So many things that I bring up or happen with my health, you're always trying to get to the root of it. Mm-hmm. It's the root. And of course, you'll go to the most ancient spiritual text there is, which makes sense.
It's in my astrology too, not to get too woo-woo out there, but it's funny. That's a big part of my personality is like, I want to get to the depths of the depths and know to the nth degree how something works. And so I think that that's one of the reasons that the Vedas do resonate with me so strongly. But I'm a big proponent and believer that it doesn't matter what you prescribe to. And that's also a reason I love the Vedas, is that You don't have to believe in any religion. It's totally universal. And it's beautiful to, I think often people associate yoga with a specific religion when in truth, you don't have to, you don't need to, it can be completely customized to you.
Yeah, that's great. But the thing about you specifically that I'm so interested in is that like these ancient texts are there, they're available, they've been around for 5,000 years, as you've said, but they haven't really been applied, especially we've lost touch with that in the West. Mm-hmm. So how are you taking this ancient wisdom now and applying it to today?
Yeah. This has really been the journey for me over the past few years of this integration of starting to notice how the ancient teachings that I was embodying in my own life were actually making me a better human being in every facet of my life. So I contribute the success that I've had in the corporate world, even my like ability to present in front of people, to the work that I've done on myself, particularly from the learnings that I have received from reading texts like the Upanishads. And that was the big aha moment for me, was that, oh, wait, if I'm doing this deep work, it's actually impacting my ability to live life in a more effective way. It's making me a better partner to you. It's making me understand how to eat food that's more supportive for me, cook for you in a way that's more supportive for you. It's helping me understand how to align my money with the things that I really want to do in my life. And then furthermore, it's actually making me better at my job because I'm able to articulate how my innate purpose connects to my company's innate purpose. And people believe that. When you believe something and you're speaking it from the depths of your own soul, people feel that. And so that was the big insight and big aha for me, is that all of these ancient teachings are so applicable to our modern lives and every single facet of our modern life. And that's the beauty. And also the tragedy. The tragedy is that we have lost touch with these ancient teachings. And that's why I believe we have such a massive opportunity to reintegrate these worlds and to apply this ancient wisdom to our modern life to make us better human beings and ultimately evolve ourselves as individuals, but also evolve ourselves as a species.
Amazing. Aside from obviously listening to this podcast, what advice would you give people as they're trying to hit this self-revolution journey for themselves? Or what advice would you have given to yourself, back in the day?
Yeah. There's so much. The first thing I would say is to start to spend time with yourself. I mean, that is the number one tool and my number one piece of advice, is that you are your own best guide. And that in so much of today's society, we are being asked to listen to others. We're scrolling on social media, trying to listen to other people's advice. We're trying to seek out all of these answers outside of ourselves, when actually the real truth is inside of you. And so as painful and as weird as it might feel on the onset, my advice is to get quiet with yourself and to spend time alone, to get into nature, to reconnect to the natural harmony. And even if you just did that, you're going to get and receive answers just by being alone and connecting yourself to nature, and everything else is gravy on top.
Again, I can attest to that. You encouraged me to take the week-long camping trip by myself a few years ago and found some insights there for sure.
Yeah. And I think that that's where this stuff can feel so complicated, can feel so challenging, but it's actually very, very simple. And we're the ones who have complicated it for ourselves in many ways. Getting back to basics.
Get back to basics, back to your nature. Mm-hmm. Love that. It's an amazing and funny, honestly, to see you on this journey at times, because you're doing things like sound baths and meditations for people in suits and not always what you'd expect at some of these events. And can you touch upon that and merging those two worlds?
It's been really fun for me to be brave enough, honestly, to do that, but also to see how well it's been received. I think at the onset, and I got, teary talking about how challenging it has been for me at times, which is very true. But it goes to show, at least for me, when you stay true to yourself, anything's possible. And that's what has happened in my own lived experience, is that by bringing these things like sound meditation or meditation in general, or even just the philosophy behind these teachings into more of a business and corporate setting, it has been such a relief to people in that world. They're like, oh my God, this feels so good. Wow, I feel so connected to you. I want to do more business with you because of how good this feels. And it goes to show at the end of the day, regardless of our backgrounds, regardless of what profession we're in or where we come from, we are all human beings. And we are all driven by the same things. We're all love and consciousness at our core. And so these teachings and this philosophy and the things that really connect us in life are all the same. And so it's been such a privilege to be able to bring some of these practices into that world. And I'm so excited to continue to do more of that and to refine it in a way that resonates with people. Because I think what happens a lot of times is that these teachings or the words feel so far away from what we are used to that it gets eye rolls and gets confusion. But I do feel like we are hitting an inflection point in the West where there's a lot more science that's beginning to back up this ancient wisdom. I was actually at this YPO event earlier this year where some of the top scientists in the world, Andrew Huberman, Mark Hyman, all of these doctors were talking about functional medicine. And the principles of that are, guess what? Basically the same principles that are rooted in Ayurveda. Andrew Huberman was there talking about the benefits of open meditation. And it was fascinating. I was literally keeping a list in my phone of all of the things that were referenced back and rooted in this wisdom. And so I feel like we are at this cusp, and I'm really excited to do more to bring that to the business world, to intersect both worlds, because we need each other. And that's really what is going to create a more harmonious planet. And that's what I feel so passionately about creating.
Amazing. And I think, you're the person to do that. Again, I'm biased. But as you know, I'm a big Alan Watts fan. And Alan Watts, decades ago, was bringing some of this Eastern philosophy to the Western world. But he is an Englishman with a deep voice, smoking a pipe and a big beard. It's what people would think of more of woo-woo. But you are that woman in the high heels and the sexy suit going to the business world. So what about your approach is going to be different than the traditional woo-woo Eastern medicine?
I wouldn't say I have it all figured out to begin with. It's been a journey for me and it's kind of been that pendulum swing for me of trying to figure out how do you talk about these things in a way that really resonates with people. And so I think that that's really going to be the next part of my evolution, is to continue to be able to really refine that in a way that threads that needle in a way that really is accessible for people. But I know it can be done. I've seen it be done. So many of the clients that I've worked with are professionals or entrepreneurs in the Western world who have never heard of what yoga really is. Yet when they actually go through some of the practices and experiences, they're having these massive insights. And these insights aren't happening at the level of the logical mind. They're happening at the level of the soul and the level of your heart. And they are fundamentally changed through that experience. And so I know that that's what is possible. And I know that as we continue this journey, it's not just about me either. It's really about a collective and building a collective force, a collective conversation that allows us all to tackle, honestly, that challenge and problem together. That's the opportunity.
That is. If only you could get on the campaign trail and sit with some of our candidates, maybe we'd have a more harmonious, fulfilled world.
I'm not going to touch that one.
Well, season 1's wrapping up. This is it. Any last reflections or anything for your audience?
I have been wanting to share more of this, to be of service to others for so long. And it's been really fun to do that this season, and hasn't been perfect. Certainly a learning journey, like everything is in life, but I'm so excited for what's to come. And I know it's only the beginning.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks, babe. I love you. And it's been really special to do this with you. So thanks for being on this journey with me. Thank you from the depths of my heart for being here with me this season. I am so, so immensely grateful for all of you that have listened, who have commented, who have sent me a note. It has absolutely meant the world to me. And the truth is that a self-revolution is not by yourself, that it happens within community, and we learn from one another. And I have learned so much from my clients and from my fellow teachers and colleagues. And I am so immensely, immensely grateful for all of their wisdom. And I am so excited to continue to see what we can collectively bring to life. So thank you for being here with me this season. I can't wait to be back for season 2. From my heart to yours. Namaste.